team was built out, I just wanted to kind of show the scale and the kind of challenges that we had. When I built out the team, I had two tracks. One was our security and incident response team, and the other was the law enforcement response team. And those are the people who law enforcement comes to with subpoenas, warrants, and asks for data, and we give it to them. And this is, I haven't found any other company that's really done it this way yet. But the reason we did it this way, because usually the law enforcement team are under legal, under lawyers, they're treated as compliance, not really as security. The reason we did it this way is I thought the security and incident response team is going to proactively look on our site and find what people are doing, try and figure out what the underground economy is around us, disrupt it that way. But we can also gain a lot of information about what criminals are doing on the site because the police are going to come and tell us every time they give us a warrant or a subpoena. And putting those two pieces of information, those two information collection mechanisms together has actually produced wonderful results. And the tools that we build, we can simultaneously build for both teams. So the same tools that they might use to respond to a warrant request or a subpoena request, we can use internally to investigate attacks and incidents. And the less than 50 million number is, that was about the number of users before we started building out this team. Until that point, each of these boxes represented one person. So we had about 3 people doing this job. As we've gotten greater than 50 million, we built out, and we split the security and incident response team into 3 separate silos. Malware does pretty much what you expect it does, is we go and get malware that targets us, we reverse engineer it, we analyze it, we run it in boxes. If they're bots, we try and get into the command and control network to see what they're doing, all that kind of stuff. Investigation is pretty much what you expect. It's developing cases against people, looking at attacks, analyzing what they're doing, and trying to figure out how to circumvent them. And intelligence is in the middle because it is a little bit in the middle. It's not only analyzing the attacks that people are doing against us, but looking at the whole value chain. How is someone able to pull off this attack? What is their ultimate goal? How does the community feel about us? Are they afraid of us? Are they not? Are people planning attacks? Is someone shopping around for a particular script? That's what we do in intelligence. I have some great stories there, but you have to hit me up later to see if you can get them out of me. So this is a big one that I used also from the very beginning, is compliance isn't security. And I'm going to call out PCI as one spec, but everyone knows there's a lot more specs. And a lot of organizations, I think, will have a security organization that comes in and really views the world from an information security perspective. So they're going to have a spec, they want policies around it, they're going to implement password controls and IT access controls and things of that nature. But really, from the outside world, the real threats that we faced, and maybe your organization is going to face, those don't really do anything. You can be fully PCI compliant and still get hacked, as has been proven many, many times. So when you're small and you're moving fast and you have a lot of very dynamic attacks against you, in my opinion, the time you spend on compliance above and beyond what you absolutely have to is time wasted. Okay, here's a little bit of a model of how we think about the world, and we'll see how it works. Call this diagram the triangle for obvious reasons. It's going to be a triangle. So the base is vulnerabilities, and the way that we define vulnerabilities is every piece of software, every device, every building, everything really has some mechanism to get in. We all know this. We just maybe don't know what it is yet, but there's a way in or around everything. If I could make the base of the triangle infinite, I would, because that's the way that I think about it. And if you spend time going after every single vulnerability or trying to find every single vulnerability in your network, in your application, in your physical plant, anywhere, you're spending a lot of time going after and trying to categorize an infinite set. Maybe not the most useful time. Threats are, the way we define threats are, there are vulnerabilities that are actually, would be harmful if they were exploited in your environment. So understanding which of the vulnerabilities are important, i.e. threats, versus those that are just there, and prioritizing accordingly is really important. This is hopefully not something that is new to everyone here, because I think that's the way we've all thought about security for a long time. And I think most of the security organization, and especially compliance specifications, really sit in these two layers of the triangle, and they don't go further than that. Because without attacks, threats and vulnerabilities are fine. If you take an XP machine that's unpatched and sit it in a room that no one can get into, and don't worry about the output and have only one person come use it, and you never connect it to the internet or do anything, if you're printing paper off of there, it's probably okay. It's not a huge issue. But as soon as you plug that in to the internet, you have attacks. And especially when you're thinking about the XP boxes being plugged in on the internet, it's almost as if we think about it as a force of nature, that you plug the box in and automatically attacks are going to come and eventually the box will get owned, and that's kind of just the way it is. So the way to approach that is be very strong at the level between threats and attacks. Harden that so that you can be attacked without the box getting owned. You can fight off those attacks. I think that's valuable, and obviously you want to do that at a lot of layers. But if you have the most leveraged way to attack attacks is that there are people behind them. They're not forces of nature. Every one of those attacks comes from someone who has an agenda, a motive, something that they want to do. And if you go after them, a few of them, you'll reduce the people that are specifically targeting you. And that's what we decided to do. Oh, I skipped ahead, actually. I was talking about things that were in future slides. Anyway, I think a lot of people focus on threats and vulnerabilities, especially in compliance. Attacks are a great place to understand how those things report and then go after the actors. What a wonderful slide. Okay. So the way that we really dealt with this is, and this is pretty much our policy still, is we don't pay attention to the vulnerabilities. I mean, we keep track of them in terms of knowing what's out there and knowing what's relevant so that we can assess what's a threat or not. But if we see that there's something on any of the millions of lists, or we hear it from any of our vendors that this is relevant to us, we're not automatically going to go patch that thing. We're going to do a threat assessment first. And those threat assessments are really based on overall in the company what's important. And what's important to us is protecting user data, keeping the site running, and making people feel secure with putting their data up. So if there's a threat that's going to, say, address something that's not necessarily related to the production website, it's internal, and we don't think that there's any way it's going to, if it was compromised that would access user data, we're probably not going to get to that one right away. The really important thing to us, though, is watching attacks and identifying attacks, because if someone's attacking you, that's really the best mechanism you have for identifying who they are and going after them. You can ultimately expand that, as I'll talk about in a later slide, to other mechanisms to identify them. But at the point when they're attacking you, you have a bunch of data that you can, if you build a site correctly, a bunch of data that you can get that will help you identify and attribute that person. Even if you don't necessarily know who they are in the real world, you can collate attacks that are later attributable to someone. And then go after the actors. The way that we decided to do this is everyone has a motive, figure out what the motives are, and frustrate them. So I'm going to talk about spam in a second. Obviously, with spammers, their motive is making money. And if you destroy the economics of spamming for them, they'll leave you alone. And by the way, if you have a judgment for $870 million against someone, you're destroying the economics of spamming for them. So one thing that we're really big on at Facebook also is distributed help. And this has probably actually affected a bunch of people in this room. It's not security related, but it's a philosophical thing. When we decided to translate the site into